Welcome to this explainer. Look, today we're going to completely tear down the high-stakes illusion that society feeds us about money. Because the truth is, practically everything you've been taught to admire, the flashy cars, the sprawling estates, the crazy visible status symbols, it's largely just a performance. True wealth, the kind that actually matters, is completely invisible. It's about psychology, it's about endurance, and most importantly, it's about survival.
Seriously, I want you to ask yourself, what if everything you see about wealth is a total lie? We are so wired to judge financial success just by what's visible to the eye. But by the end of this explainer, we're going to completely shift that paradigm. We'll move away from that fragile illusion of visible status, and we're going to uncover the quiet, invincible power of invisible survival.
To really get this, take a look at this incredible quote from media executive Barry Diller. He said, "The inside is rarely as beautiful as the outside." And our source material shares this stark, honestly almost unbelievable anecdote about this. A few years ago, police released crime scene photos of P. Diddy's Los Angeles mansion. Now, from the outside, it was this breathtaking, immaculate estate, right? But the inside? The photos showed it was an absolute dump. It turns out people will literally spend fortunes manicuring their lawns for strangers driving by, while the inside of their home, the part only they actually experience, is a total mess. And that contrast between the facade and reality, it is the absolute perfect metaphor for how we view money.
All right, let's get into Section 1, the facade, the illusion of visible wealth.
As a culture, we completely idolize spent money. We look at luxury and we just assume it automatically equals happiness and contentment. But high-status spending is rarely about actual utility. Actually, it's almost entirely a psychological performance. Just consider the psychology behind the ultimate status symbol, the bright yellow Ferrari. When you see a middle-aged guy driving one, you aren't just looking at a fast car. You're usually looking at a story. That car is almost always a psychological trophy. It's this loud, super expensive way for someone to prove to themselves and, the rest of the world that they've overcome past doubts, or maybe that they're no longer that poor kid who once got snubbed. It's not really about internal contentment, it's about filling a psychological hole with an external benchmark.
There's this brilliant kind of funny heuristic mentioned in our source material for this. It goes like this. Rich people food looks better than it tastes, and poor people food tastes better than it looks. Think about a super fancy 3-star Michelin meal. It's visually stunning, incredibly expensive, perfect for an Instagram photo, but honestly, a lot of the time the actual taste is entirely mediocre. Now contrast that with a $1 Taco Bell chalupa. I mean, it looks terrible, but it tastes amazing. So much of high-status spending is exactly like that Michelin meal. It's a rigid, expensive performance designed for an audience of total strangers, while true internal comfort is often cheap and entirely unseen.
Let's move to Section 2, the psychological traps, aspiration versus toxic envy. Now, the absolutely crucial point here is understanding the subtle yet incredibly dangerous distinction between aspiration and envy. Because if external benchmarks are a trap, these are the internal enemies of wealth. Aspiration is having a North Star. It's looking up to someone because you admire their success, their integrity, the whole package of their life, You want to emulate their good habits. Envy, on the other hand, is completely toxic. Envy is when you look at someone's success but you deeply resent how they achieved it. You see, evolution didn't wire us to be happy. It wired us to survive by constantly comparing ourselves to our neighbors. And if you let envy take the wheel, I promise you, no amount of money will ever be enough. Which leads us perfectly to what we can call the LA dentist trap. Picture this. You're a dentist making $300,000 a year. By almost any historical or global standard, you are absolutely crushing it. But if you live and socialize in Los Angeles, you're driving past 30,000 square foot mansions and fleets of Lamborghinis every single day. Because your social group so dramatically inflates your expectations, making $300,000 a year can literally make you feel broke. The wealth is there, for sure, but the out-of-control expectations completely destroy any chance of contentment.
Okay, Section 3, the lie sold, the passive income myth. We hear the phrase passive income all the time, and we instantly imagine getting paid to do absolutely nothing, right? The most common example people throw around is real estate. But let's totally shatter that illusion right now. Being a landlord is a brutal, full-time, highly active job. You are dealing with broken toilets in the middle of the night, leaking roofs, tenants who just won't pay rent, and massive property damage. There is absolutely nothing passive about managing human beings and physical structures. It is just relentless stress.
In fact, every single form of so-called passive income was once extreme active labor. Even if you managed to reach the absolute pinnacle of true passive income, like, say, just sitting back and clipping coupons from government treasury bonds. You still had to perform intense active labor in the past to generate that initial capital. Wealth is never just handed to you for free. The market always demands a price.
That brings us to Section 4, the paradigm shift, purchasing independence today. So, if wealth isn't about flashy cars and passive income is mostly a myth, what exactly are we saving our money for? Well, we need to flip the script entirely. Saving is not a punishment. It's not delayed gratification. It is a high-stakes purchase that you benefit from right now, today. Independence isn't some binary state where you're either fully retired or a total wage slave. It's a spectrum. Look at step 1. Having just $100 in the bank gives you a tiny bit more independence than having zero. Step 2. Having 6 months of living expenses means you can survive a massive macro crisis or a job loss without going into total panic mode. And step 3 is total financial autonomy. The point is, even a tiny amount of savings gives you an immediate, measurable level of freedom today.
So try thinking of your savings as a claim check. Every single dollar you save is literally a claim check on your future that you control, instead of your boss or a credit card company. When you start viewing savings this way, you realize you're actively purchasing a wider channel of endurance. You're building this massive cushion to shield yourself against life's brutal, terrifying unknowns. You aren't delaying pleasure at all. You are buying the ability to sleep soundly at night. But of course, holding on to those claim checks requires doing something really difficult. Isidore Sharp, the founder of the Four Seasons, perfectly captured this idea when he said, "Excellence is the capacity to take pain." Now, we usually think of physical pain with a quote like that, right? Like an athlete pushing their body to the limit. But the reality is that financial excellence requires an immense capacity to endure psychological and financial pain without breaking.
And here we are at Section 5, the climax. The ultimate secret is survival.
The absolute highest level of financial strategy has absolutely nothing to do with being the smartest person in the room or picking the perfect stock or perfectly timing the market. The ultimate secret to wealth is simply outlasting the pain. The true cost of admission in capitalism is survival. It means putting up with a never-ending chain of uncertainty, extreme market volatility, global pandemics, recessions, unforeseen crises, and not crying uncle. It's looking at a brutal 30% drop in your life savings and having the sheer psychological endurance to stay in the game rather than panicking and selling everything at the absolute bottom.
And if you can survive, the math starts to reward you in ways that completely defy human intuition. Just consider this staggering number: 99%. 99% of legendary investor Warren Buffett's incredible net worth was accumulated only after his 65th birthday. Let that sink in for a second. His wealth isn't just the result of picking good companies, it's the result of surviving the financial markets for 3/4 of a century.
That right there is the magic of compounding. The math of wealth goes completely bananas at the very end of the timeline. But here is the massive catch. You absolutely cannot experience that explosive compounding if you do not survive the volatility of the beginning and the middle. If your uncle point, that moment the pain just gets too high and you tap out, hits in year 10, you will literally never see the massive exponential rewards of year 40.
So let's bring this whole explainer full circle. We are taught our whole lives to chase external status, the yellow Ferraris, the giant mansions, the Michelin meals. But as we've seen, those are all fragile illusions of spent money, mostly designed to impress people who aren't even paying attention to us anyway. But true wealth is internal survival. It's the unspent money. It's the invisible safety net. It's the quiet, invincible power of knowing you have the claim checks to weather absolutely any storm the world throws at you.
Which leads us with this final, truly provocative thought. I want you to fast forward to the end of your life. When you're looking back, what are you actually going to regret? Will you honestly regret the designer clothes you didn't buy or the luxury car you didn't lease just to impress your neighbors? Or will you deeply regret the independence you didn't secure and the peace of mind you couldn't provide for your family because you were just too busy putting on a show? The choice between visible status and invisible wealth is entirely yours. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.